series. Thanks to all the staff for preparing so much. I mean, the curators helped hold up the sign. Liza had a really special idea to have fruit salad cups today as an homage to Bob, because Bob always brings fruit salad. And she's also been instrumental in preparing the materials that you see throughout all of the speaker series. And Travis has obviously been helping throughout. As you could see, we were just doing sound check. He's woven into everything that we do, just as Bob had been during his time at the helm. Thank you all for being here, for taking the time out of your night to share this experience with us. And thank you, Bob, for taking not just tonight, but so many parts of your days and evenings preparing for this.
You're welcome.
I know we'll all benefit from that, and so will people watching this for years to come. And I'm going to introduce Bob, but it's going to be a little different than the others that I introduced, because this has a little more storytelling, I feel like. So we're going to dive in to Bob growing up in Cuba City, Wisconsin, or near Cuba City, Wisconsin, in the midst of a lead mining region. Both of his grandfathers were miners and farmers. Open mine shafts and associated rock piles were just part of the farm and the neighborhood. When he told me that, I was like, lead mining? There's a lot about Wisconsin history I still have to learn. The barn was made from timbers and lumber from the mining buildings. The house was 2 3-form mining houses and the mining office put together to make a still small house by today's standards. It's pretty unconventional. The one-room county school that his father attended was just a mile away and unchanged in 50 years. History was just a part of everyday life. Bob attended high school in Cuba City. He graduated from the University of Wisconsin-Platteville in 1970 with a degree in sociology. He went on to serve in the Peace Corps on a tiny island in Micronesia for 2 years, teaching English. And in 1976, Bob and his wife, Ruth, who is from Sheboygan, and their stepson, Kurt, moved back here. Bob worked at the Rehabilitation Center of Sheboygan for 14 years and became involved as a volunteer here at the Sheboygan County then Historical Society during his time working at the Rehabilitation Center. And you also joined the board at that time.
Right.
Yeah. He coordinated the reprinting of the Buchan Book and Historic Sheboygan County, and he launched the local history fair event at Memorial Mall. He believes that education, lifelong learning, respect for history, sharing it with the community, and especially with children, is the gift a museum can bring to a community. He was selected as the executive director of the Sheboygan County then Historical Museum in 1991 and served in that position for 22 years until 2013. Even though these years included major construction projects, it was really about getting with the programs. So please join me in getting with the program and welcoming our esteemed speaker, Bob Harker.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my background and some of the experiences here at the museum. And thank you so much for coming. As she mentions, 22 years from 1991 to 2013. And what an adventure it was. Just everything was an adventure. And I worked with the history fair at the mall, but I didn't really work with the museum. So it was a very new opportunity for me. The mission for the museum, of course, is collect, preserve, and educate. And if you're not educating, then kind of what's the point of the other two? So my bent is really towards the education part and how the structure and the new museum really focused on helping with that. There are so many people in Sheboygan County who support local history and support the museum and the Historical Society, and that's very much appreciated. There are some handouts that were available tonight. I included those because there's so much that I really can't get to, but I want to be sure you have a chance to see some of those things. The historical community over the years, it wasn't just the Historical Society. There was so many other organizations too, and that list is included there. The Wisconsin Historical Society was a tremendous boost for me. The Office of Local History and Tom McKay, he was my go-to guy. I'd been involved with the Council for Wisconsin History, which is representing all the smaller organizations, but affiliated with the State Historical Society. And I think on my second day, I called Tom and I said, I'm willing to make decisions, but I don't know what my choices are for the kinds of things that I would be dealing with. And so he was very helpful with that. There's also included in the packet a description of the four education programs. There'll be a few pictures here tonight, but be sure to take a few minutes of time. Just outside the room here, they have a wonderful display of the program and the photos that go with that. Third Saturday program, that's also included. It includes pieces of the puzzle. And for 6 years, at 10 programs a year, that's 60 programs, which in hindsight and in the beginning it seemed insane, but they worked, they worked, so that was fun. And that gives you a little bit of view on those. The programs and facilities developed over time. We added 3 new buildings to the site. Museum Day on Sunday morphed into History Adventure Weekend. Christmas Memories of 10 days morphed into Holiday Memories, extending from Sunday before Thanksgiving to the 30th of December. The program tonight is organized by subject matter rather than by years. Please keep in mind that collection, acquisitions, museum tours, display development, installation, quarterly meetings, newsletters, event planning, fundraising events, staff development, growing the membership, developing, building new museum buildings, and special projects, holiday memories, third Saturdays. These were all happening at the same time, even though we're going to sort it out, okay? There'll be time for questions at the end of the presentation. And then after the questions, we have added a special presentation. They'll only take about 10 minutes or so, but I'm hoping that you can all stay and watch that. And it's a behind-the-scenes introduction to a Circus Echoes project that we did. Some of you are familiar, still the old format, but that was another adventure in the midst of all the other things that were going on. Just a little bit more background here before we get started. Betty Potter, as director of the museum, was an employee of the county. When I came on, I was an employee of the Historical Society, as were the part-time staff. In a general sense, the county owned the property and the buildings. The Historical Society became responsible for the operation of the museum. The county would support the operation of the museum with a grant each year. It is a relationship that keeps being defined each year as the museum continues to grow to serve Sheboygan County community. The historic structures on the ground when I came, the log house, the barn, cheese factory, outhouse, and stump puller and corn crib, and of course Taylor House. Historic structures that were added, silo windmill were added, and there were a long list of repairs and maintenance of historic structures. Several logs had been replaced in the log house, new roofs on the log house, the barn, and the Taylor House, exterior restoration of the Taylor House, and a coat of paint for the barn, the cheese factory, and the silo. So with that, let's take a look at the picture up here. And the colors of the Taylor House give you some idea, but that's the color when I came. Okay, we did some research on that, and so that got changed. But note, and it's kind of hard to see, but the mailbox down there. So this is not when I came. This was a little bit later. But our friend Cal Wheeler, I asked him to make a mailbox that looked like the Taylor House, and so that's what he did down there. So that's fun. Anything to draw a little bit more attention, what's going on. The flagpole, the interesting story there, the flagpole, of course, is in the right place, and they planted little bushes around it, which grew up. And my staff would say, Bob, these bushes are eating me when I go try to put the flag up or down, especially when it rains. So it kind of got overgrown that way. But the most important thing to notice here, and it's right here, that's the driveway. That's the driveway going onto the property. And up behind the Taylor House is all green space there, all the way to the woods. So if people are having picnics, they're going up and down here. When we started having Museum Day, and hundreds of people and hundreds of cars, they all came right up there, right through the crowd, and then park on the green grass up there. So as we got better at the programs and more people attending, the more dangerous it became. So eventually, though, of course, the county moved the driveway. All right, I got to get there. There we go. I took a picture just this about a week or so ago, but I wanted to just a refresher of the buildings on here. Let's go to this. Right here, that's what it looked like when I started. Our space was the kitchen of the Taylor House. Many of you have been there. That's where the staff worked out of. A couple of filing cabinets, the one table. There's a typewriter, electric typewriter there. There's a computer on the table that a board member brought from his son who was teaching school in a Minneapolis school district somewhere. I don't think we ever plugged it in. But we had a new copy machine back there. And then out of sight to the right a little bit was a mechanical typewriter, because that was the only thing with the cards we needed to identify all the artifacts. That's the only one where that would work. And in pretty short order, that wasn't working either, because the roller on there, remember those hard black rollers on there, it would slip and slide. But you know what? I could find somebody who fixed typewriters at that point. And he came in, he says, Bob, if this happens again, just take a piece of sandpaper and go over it a couple of times, it'll be good. So we were back in business again. So, real quick here, this was my staff, okay? Sonia's here, so she can laugh. Anyway, that's my staff. It was fun. Sonia had been here for a while. Rita had been here. Jerry was brand new. At that point, he had a motorcycle, and it was a Saturday morning. I said, how about you bring your motorcycle? And Rita's husband brought a motorcycle, and we'll take staff pictures, because there was a tour, and they were all going to be dressed up anyway, so I got a costume and my hat and stuff. And so we did it before the Boy Scouts got there, but they got there early. And they thought the museum must be the greatest place in the world if you had this going on, you know. So it's kind of fun. And if it wasn't obvious, then there's the motorcycles right there. So fun. So then we're on to historic outdoor structures and some upgrades there. We'll go on. The windmill. And you've all seen the windmill when it's been operating, and it's hard. It's hard. Up here on the hill, the wind is really hard on that piece of equipment, and it needs regular maintenance and stuff. But when it's up on a 40-foot tower, you don't realize how big that fan is. So that's Cal Wheeler. That's one of the projects he adopted, and he worked on that, as did a lot of other people too. But he was one of my guys who go up on the tower up there and do some maintenance there as well. Rich Schleicher was the other one. He's a retired fireman, and he was used to being on ladders and stuff. So that was one of the projects that Cal did. We also got to a point where we needed to repaint the tower. It was showing signs, and we said, well, how in the world are we going to do that? Nobody wants to go up on there anyway. But the amazing thing is that the windmill is built in 10-foot sections, so it's 40 feet high. Scaffolding is built in 5-foot sections. So as long as we offset by a foot at the bottom, we could weave the scaffolding in right in around it, and that's how we accomplished that particular task, and it worked very well. I'll guarantee you, if you're on 40 feet of scaffolding, that thing is going to be dancing around up there. You don't want to be there. So that was that. Okay. Just a couple more things here. The silo, they built the top for the silo on the ground, brought in a crane, lifting that into position. And this young man over here, there was a number of people involved with the museum who were from one sort of program or another. Some of them needed to give time to the community. Some were in youth programs, and we welcomed them and put them to work. This young man came, and I said, well, we got the stump puller, and the county brought us a stump. I need you to dig a hole to drop this thing in. And he's not a very big kid. He's high school, I think, though. And I gave him this spade, and I showed him where I wanted him to cut. and he jumped on that spade and he could not cut the sod. So I helped him with that, and then he was on his way, and he did a really nice job, so it was fun. So the next picture here. It's the same picture you see on the wall over there. Part of the reason for me coming on full time was that the board was making the effort, intending to build a new museum. They wanted somebody on board ahead of that by a couple of years, trying to get up to speed, try to take care of the museum, development, all that kind of thing. And hopefully a couple of years before we would be building. And we wanted to draw attention to that. And so acquaintance of mine, Ted Bednar, he'd do programs, and he was kind of a cartoonist. He'd put paper around the room like this, and he'd have a microphone in one hand, draw on the paper, Mickey Mouse cartoons or whatever, but be telling stories. I said, can you do this for us, and we'll take it to the county fair. We'll take it to the county fair because that's Sheboygan County's biggest party. And if we can have that on display, we got something to talk about. Anyway, it's real fun. Eventually, we got going with construction. This first section is just going to be about the construction, new construction of buildings. This is soil borings. Got to find out what's underneath, so when they are designing what they'll run into. And here, the part of the county contribution is bringing in trucks and help and taking care of all the trees to prepare the site. And the next one, we're already got the building up. We're underground, except if you were seeing it from the outside, we're not above ground. Eventually, we put ground over it. But here we're in the gallery, probably right about over there. And they got a truck down there and a backhoe, and they're digging in a drainage system underneath. We did everything we possibly could to minimize the moisture coming either from the top, the sides, or from the bottom. Here they are filling in. I don't know. I wouldn't want a job driving that piece of equipment. But there the structure is in place. It's on the north side. The wood is just off to the right. And two things here. This is the front of the museum. Lots of you remember that, I suspect, right inside what we call the Sunshine Room. But the other picture here is really important. When the board was working with developing the museum, working with architects, and they were suggesting going underground. The building is going to be so large above ground and dwarf the historic buildings. And somebody said, how about we go underground? And I really drug my feet on that one. I said, I've grown up in Wisconsin, and basements are wet. And wet is what you don't want in a museum. You've got to convince me that you can build this. And so eventually I was convinced, as were other board members, by putting the drainage from under the building, from alongside the buildings, they have that. But how about on top? And what they did is they built it, put the top on, they put these coverings on top, and they put somewhere between 3 and 5 inches of water on there and let it sit for 24 hours. And they tested, because there's a slight slope to the roof, it's not flat, it slants about a foot. They had to do it in 3 sections, but they left that for 24 hours and there were no leaks on any one of them. So we felt pretty good about that. So here we are at the front of the museum. I love this picture. Tells who we are and everything. But there's a Taylor house right there in the reflection, you know. So that one's just kind of fun. Those letters that were above the door, well, within a year, we had the other $500,000 come through from the Charlotte and Walter Kohler Charitable Trust. We had gone ahead with the other part of the building because we had major donors who said, we give you $100,000, and what are you doing with it? You know, why aren't you starting? So that's why we went ahead with the underground part. And then almost immediately after we got done with that, we get a call from the trust and says, oh, by the way, you can stop by and pick up your check for $500,000. When are you going to start, you know, kind of thing. So we'll get into that picture next year, but those letters which were on the building, I said, save those letters. I want to put them on a sign out by the street, and then those message boards are things we could slide in and out. So here's the architect's drawing of that entrance. The end product was a little bit different, but that's where we went into. The Kohler family was happy with having what appeared to be another historic structure that would have been common in a farm setting available there as the entrance. So we're right back into construction again. So here we are. Everything's tore up. In the construction process, when we first started with this building, what we discovered was that the water that was used in the Taylor house all those years for the sink and the toilets and all that kind of stuff, that was coming from Sunny Ridge. I don't think there's anybody who knew that, So we got into the new construction, then we had to tie into the city down on Erie Avenue there, which congested traffic for a little while. So that's what we're into there. The next sign here, I just had to take this picture. It says museum entrance. It's kind of for fun. So here's the building underway. Fake stone on the base of it, which looks real nice. And away it goes. It's adding about 5,000 square feet to the museum structure. Some volunteers in the next one here. They're building something. I give you 5 seconds to tell me what it is. Oh, okay. Well, we're going to show you. Here it is, right there. It's going up on top. So in the middle of this, anytime we could save some money, we have some very talented volunteers. And so they built that, and of course the crane lifted it into place, and just a little bit of fun. As soon as this project was done, we got to have a party, We got to use it. So this is what it looked like before anything was in there, and we had a party, and it was wrapped around the Knievers Hotel. How many people remember the Knievers Hotel? Yeah, lots of people. It burned down. The Knievers family is very involved with the Historical Society, and so we wanted to have a program about the Knievers Hotel and some of the traditions there. When you went there, they gave you a glass of ice water, and you went and sat down at the table with that. They had very economical meals that anybody could at least go and have a nice meal out once in a while. They had no menus. They didn't need them. Everybody knew what was on Monday. Everybody knew what was on Tuesday, and it was on Wednesday, and so on. So that was great fun. We had 200 people there, and we catered it in. We also, with this building, the Kohlers were very prominent in Wisconsin history, and so at another time, our Governor Tommy Thompson thought it would probably be a good idea to stop by, being he was invited to do so. And Terry Kohler had done a presentation, and Tommy Thompson stopped by too. So that's fun. It's all fun. And for years here, now this is Kerry Kautzer and Fritz Zink. The Historical Society and the museum has been involved with WSCS, it used to be TV8, I think, with their studios over on Broadway Avenue. Even with the history fair at the mall, we would take some of our guests there, do a program with Al Chop. Al Chop did a program. So all the way along, when we talk about the historical community, WSCS certainly has been a part of that, and we appreciate that very much. We just got the new flagpole from the Armory, just got it installed. Just got that installed. But remember the problem with the flag out front. So now it's time to move it. And Jerry Kahns is here digging a hole to put that 42-inch circle in so we could pour cement in there. And everything really seemed to be going to plan until I got the bill for that cardboard thing, because they couldn't believe it was 42 inches. Who would buy that? They charged me for 42 feet. So anyway, that's the fun with that. The next picture, this is a historic picture of the Taylor house, and I don't know when the picture was taken, but it was the best picture that we could find that gave us the most information about what the Taylor house looked like. Okay, and so this is what we used when we designed and built the porch on the right side, the front porch, and lots of the details. This is the photo that we used. There was lots of other kinds of work going on too. Here's Jerry and Roger Fields, a volunteer. Where are they? Of course, they're on the roof of the Taylor house. The top of the chimney was deteriorating. The mortar was deteriorating. And that's basically 4 floors up. So if they start falling, it's just not a good thing. So they took it apart and rebuilt those. And to get there, dragging the mortar and the materials up and crawling out through one of the windows in the cupola up there. That's how they got there and took care of that. So you might take a second to take a look at this photo. Jerry's there with a saw cutting through brick. And there's a clue there, and it's the doorstep right towards the bottom there. There was a time when there were 2 doors there. And the doors were always visible from the inside, but they had been bricked up from the outside. And there, the other one's already been opened up, and they're starting to work on the second one there. So before the major reconstruction, we were doing lots of other stuff with that building. And that's a finished product right there with some very talented volunteers also in the midst of this project, putting that together. Now we come back to the rest of the structure here. For those of you who have been around for a while, you remember the tree on the corner, the bushes that would lop over onto the sidewalk, vines on the side of the building. Vines on the side of the building, generally for a brick building or any building, is not a very good idea. The moisture traps some moisture. There's all kinds of things that are not good. And it's kind of tough to see there too, but there's a set of stairs that was put in at that side of the building when it was a jail. So they were not part of the original fabric on that. So those things were all removed, and then we had a time when it looked like this. The front porch is completely gone, and worked around. A lot of things are happening with this construction project. It was really a huge project. But here's kind of how it turned out. The painters are here. You can see the color that's being used, and the door and the window that need to be done yet. Tony Rager from Sheboygan, but he had a job in Madison at the Capitol. He was the person responsible for guiding restoration efforts there. So he's very, very knowledgeable. And so I asked him if he would come and go through if we were to back up, the building was really dark green or black, basically. And if he would come through and do paint samples for us, find out what the original colors were. So he came on a Saturday. We spent 2 or 3 hours here. And he would go to places where the sun didn't hit the paint, around the windows up high. And with a piece of sandpaper, he would just go around, and he could then see every layer of paint that had ever been put on that building. And everywhere that he checked, all around the building, it was the same color, and it was this color. That was the basic paint that was down there, the original color. We have one more construction going on, and that's the Calvin Wheeler Exhibit Restoration Center. The foundation and the structure, and then the finished building there. Oh my God, we thought we died and went to heaven. This was such a beautiful, big space. We had been using a space out on a farm in the county. We asked if we could use it for a couple of years in the machine shed. Well, after about 15 years, the machine shed started falling apart. And so then we moved stuff to the lower part of a barn. And then the lady who owned the property, she up and died. And somebody bought the property, but it was wonderful because the new buyer honored the contract that had been put together that said if they wanted us to leave, we had like a year to get it out. And we were building this building, and we moved out about 2 weeks ahead of schedule. So in the end, it worked out. But it was just a fabulous addition. In the museum world, storage is just such a critical part of what you need. And what we were looking at is high, dry, and secure. When I talked with the board, what we need is high, dry, and secure. When we first talked about this building, the estimated cost was going to be $350,000. It was the end of the Iraq War, which means that there were more materials available, that the economy was not doing very well. These guys were looking for work. And for $250,000, we got high, dry, and secure. Plus, we had all the power we could possibly want over there. We had water and sewer over there. We had insulation over there. And for $250,000, it was just an incredible gift. So the very first thing that we did is we had a board meeting there. Oh, it just seemed so spacious. No, it was great. Okay, so now we go back, and I want to spend just a little bit of time on the local history fair, even though Betty covered that last week. I want to go back to that because we learned so much as an organization, and that definitely ties to the things that I did when I was here. So just a real quick review. We had these for handouts at the mall. Everybody remembers the mall, from Kohl's all the way to the north side of Meyer over there now. I'm guessing about 200 yards of hallway space inside. We could get about 35 exhibitors in there, and then we would have musicians and entertainment in front of Penny's and sometimes in front of Kohl's. So this was a big deal. And part of the format was for the historical community to be together. It's one day in the year when we all get together. The Research Center, Genealogical Society, all these groups were together for a day, and we all knew one another anyway, so that was great fun. But all the exhibitors, you've got people in your family that collect stuff, and they love stuff, and they tell you about it. Well, after maybe 10 or 15 years, you don't want to hear it anymore. Well, these people get to come out and talk to people who are interested in listening. So that's kind of the basis of it. Bring people out that know a really lot about something. And what would happen is at the mall, was a popular place, about a third of the people who would show up on that day were there because of the history fair. Another third were there because, well, the history fair is interesting, if I could do some shopping too. And the other third of the people who would show up on those days had no idea there was going to be a history fair there. But the cumulative effect was that the mall establishment loved us because we filled the parking lot. And I would hear that, people come in the afternoon. I had to park on the other side of Sears, to get in here. So, and we had all kinds of things. We had cars and trucks and tractors and fire trucks and private collections of all kinds. And it was a lot of work. So here's one of the displays there.
Is there any place where you could possibly hold something like that again?
Well, we'll get to that, okay? We'll get to that. Because there's a very special place. And what we learned there, though, is what we used for Third Saturdays. That's the answer to that, okay? Next picture here, with the local history fair, which I think ran for 12 years, was recognized nationally from the American Association of State and Local History as a really good event, and it's something that was recognized and hoping that other communities would do that. These are the chairmen of that event. The three of us covered those years, Darlene Novice and Wayne Cooney and myself. So now we're going to Museum Day on Sunday, and that morphed into History Adventure Weekend. It's good. It started out on Sundays for a lot of years, and it was a big day. It was a big day on Sunday. But eventually it morphed into History Adventure Weekend. And one of the realities of being outside is putting up tents. For rain, for sun, for whatever you need to be putting up tents. We borrow tents from the cemetery, and we take them back every year, and after about 4 or 5 years, they say, why don't you guys just keep them? Yeah, well, they ended up in the loft of the log house. So that just says that we did a lot of that. The next picture here, Betty used last week. But you can see that's that road coming up from the street, and right through where the crowd was, and we were running traffic through there, That big tent, that 30 by 60 tent there, that's the biggest that the tent company would allow us to put up on our own, any way to save a couple of bucks, So we did the 30 by 60 for a number of years. We had so many people helping out in so many ways. Brats and burgers, of course, and all kinds of good food helping out. We had music. We had drenching rains failed to dampen museum spirits. Wrong. Oh, that's not how it was. Rain was disaster. It can be, you know. And, if it's not too bad, people go under the tents if you got tents. But they couldn't hardly go inside. We didn't have the new museum yet. It was, and we hit some bad storms once in a while. But we carried on, you know. Part of it was we had rendezvous for a number of years. This is called the Addle Addle. It's a way of throwing that arrow. And the rendezvous group is just really a good group. And when we worked with them, we wanted to be sure that they embraced our people who are coming to visit, to embrace and show them what they do and what they did and learn about stuff. And Bob and Barb Fensky were just really key people in bringing that together and helping find the people who would really follow what we needed. We eventually grew to a bigger tent. This is 40 by 100 feet, which seemed enormous when it was empty. And I think by the second year, I worked with Tents Incorporated. Of course, they had to come put them up. And I called up Tim Spiro over there and I said, Tim, you don't put all these tents up on Friday, do you, for the weekends? Yeah, no. We put them all week. We put them up all week. I said, I want mine on Wednesday. And here's why. Number one, it gets here. So if it rains, it's not sopping wet underneath. And number two, who knows what I might want it for? And what we ended up using it for was on Thursday for a lot of years, the Retired Teachers Association had their picnic here. So they paid us to use it. That helped out a little bit. We used it on Saturdays for whatever kinds of things we could put in. There's a lot of hands-on things from our education programs. There were private collections, anything that we could have a lot of fun with to do that. So, but Friday night was fish boil, though. Friday night was fish boil. And that was really well attended. It was a wonderful meal. And correct me if I'm wrong, Myra, but I think we were 300, close to 400 people sometimes out there. Oh, my goodness. It was good. And then Saturday was the things there. And then Sunday, we had volunteers in our midst who say, how about a rubbish sale, Bob? We'll take care of it. And we did it outside for a few years, but our drenching rain really puts a handicap on that. But they loved that tent. They ran it like clockwork. It was wonderful. I didn't have to think about what was going on. So that's a picture there. There they are. We tried a few things. We tried a car show. People brought their old cars. That was kind of fun. We took about a half-hour drive and went through town down to the lake and back again. So we tried that. But here's, we'll get back to the fish boil. And I want to include a picture of that because we did it 3 times a year. We did it in the spring. We did it History Adventure Weekend in the summer. And we did it in the fall. So either spring or fall, I don't know which this was. Well, this was. But we hit a couple of snowstorms. And, of course, we've had people inside here, We've had people inside for the spring and fall one. But he had to cook outside, right outside the door there. But he was a trooper. But times changed and the costs changed. And we weren't able to make the kind of money that we originally were doing. So now we're on to museum exhibits, quarterly meetings. Part of what was happening when I came, just a Taylor house, a log house, cheese factory, and barn. There was no place to gather on site. There just really wasn't. But the board was really wanting to do something for the membership, to gather, reasons to gather. So we would have quarterly meetings. We'd have a speaker. We'd go to some place that they provided food or we could cater into, and we were all over the place doing that. We were as far as 5 pillars to the south. We were in 2 rivers to the north. We didn't go quite so far west, but we were at the Wade House. That list is included in the things that we put out. So it was a really good idea, but I'm including it now with museum exhibits, because when we were doing exhibits in the Taylor House initially, they would be tied to the subjects for some of the quarterly meetings. And also in the midst of developing exhibits, the Research Center, which had just formed a few years earlier, and the museum was a part of that effort as well. The Research Center was just tremendously important for the research that went into the exhibits we put on, and all the things that we did. They were very important. One of the first exhibits was about chair. We called it chair, but we were really talking about furniture. And Mary Meyer, who was a volunteer at the Research Center, was also working with exhibits here at the museum. So it was a real comfortable connection. And there were other people at the Research Center were helping out with Mary too. So the research is good, the exhibit going in is good, and with the research that was done, and the research put together this book. So there's just so many good things that happened to all of this. In the quarterly meetings then, we had Joe Richardson for one of the meetings talking about the furniture industry, and we did some other things too. So we tried to tie that all together if we were focusing on a subject. We did an exhibit on leather. We did an exhibit with leather. Again, Mary, working with the Research Center, Judy Lindman is up there helping with the installation of that. And I think it was the staff, we went through Stern's Tannery in Sheboygan Falls for us to learn more about the tannery business. But at that point, Flag Leather was still operating, so we also got a tour. And this was for the whole membership. Anybody wanted to go. It's a quarterly meeting, but if you want to go on the tour, then 4 o'clock you go to Flag Leather. While they were still operating, people are operating machines. They arranged for a tour through the whole facility. And then we were at Riverdale later for a program of one of the people who worked there and organized that. And we ended up with another book about leather industry in Sheboygan County. And this one is more about the shores of Sheboygan County. We had model boats in here. We had all kinds of things. And again, we ended up with the book, The Shores of Sheboygan County. The next exhibit we did was Native American history. So we decided to go with this, basically a campsite. We harvested the birch bark. We harvested the saplings that go inside. Mary's father had a farm, and he said, yeah, you can have anything you want there. So we were out harvesting those things. Of particular note, if you look at the photos on the right over there, you'll see a birch bark wigwam. You'll see hot water radiator and lace curtains in that wigwam. I suspect the only one in the state of Wisconsin, but it worked. It worked. And when we moved that display to this building, that wigwam actually fit out the front door and in, and it was the basis for what we have on display in here now. Now we're switching into some very special programming. The Redskins were our local basketball team. We were part of the NBL, National Basketball League, for a while, and one season in the NBA. And so we worked with a steering committee of people who knew a lot about that. John Pozowitz was one. Dwight Pelkin was one. Other people who knew a lot. I didn't know very much. I had to get a steering committee. But part of the effort to bring this program together was at WHBL. Kevin Zimmerman, he had the morning program. And they were very much a friend of the museum. If we had something going on, we could call him up and he would take time for us.
Did you know that our Attorney General has a connection to the Redskins?
I don't think I know.
His mother, his uncle, it was Ruben Laubenschlager.
Okay, sure. That's certainly a familiar name. So here we are on the radio. John is there. One of the ball players who was from New York but ended up living in Sheboygan is in the center. And the guy on the left, he loved basketball. Well, he's only about 5'4", but he was part of the team that he helped carry stuff. He helped whatever he could to be a part of that. And he would laugh and he'd say, once in a while, one of the big tall ball players got one end of the box and he's got the other end. It's a pretty funny sight carrying that along. But Kevin was so good to us, and he was very thoughtful in how he conducted the interviews, which was really nice. So we had an event down at the Armory. An event at the Armory. And I want to mention Recollitis, Wale and Grace Recollitis. They were so much a part of this era as well. And they helped. They knew where some of these people were, and I got a hold of them, and some of them came back. Jack Phelan came back from Florida and picked up his son in Indiana, and he came up. He watched a video for me. We had gotten a video from the Basketball Hall of Fame, and it said, Redskins win. That's all it says on there. We couldn't figure it out. So,
All hung out at Red Spark.
yeah, okay. So in this very room, they got here kind of early, Jack did, and his son. They were right back there, and we were busy doing stuff. I said, Jack, look at that video, and tell me who's on it. Tell me what you know. And so he goes over with his son, and they watch this video of this basketball game, and it's like 62-64 at the end. And by that time, he's laughing hysterically. It was an inter-squad game. And he was rattling off all the names. So it was just so much fun at the Armory there. We had sent information to the Journal, Milwaukee Journal. We had sent press releases to TMJ, but they didn't run anything until Sunday, and this program was on Monday. Sunday night, Monday morning, we were getting calls from families of basketball players from the Redskins from Milwaukee area, and they came up. So we had a good time. Did some interviews, shot a few baskets. There we go. That's Milt Schoon, the tall guy there. That's Milt Schoon. He did really well. Then we went over to City Streets, and the gentleman on the left he's from Sheboygan, but he ended up being the sports editor for the Los Angeles Times. Okay? And he was coming back, and he had Monday free. We said, would you be the MC for this? And he loved it. He absolutely loved it. So he did that. He blew in here in the morning and went through everything and did a really nice job. The guy on the right, Frank Zumach. He was the first coach of the Sheboygan Redskins for the NBA team. No. I'm sorry, the NBL. He was the first coach of the Redskins. Before that, these players were playing Industrial League basketball. So the NBL, he's the first coach. Where did he come from? Well, he came from Marquette. He played for Marquette. After he graduated, he was an assistant coach for Marquette. And from there, he became head coach for the Redskins. And whenever they were looking for players, guess where they went? Marquette. It was like the farm team for the Redskins, you know. So he had all kinds of stories to tell, and really did a nice job for us. And we had put together all these displays. So again, we were creating an event, but we were creating materials that immediately went on display here at the museum. And that's what that's about. So we went on to another group. And this is the Turner, Al Udovich there on the left. And I think it might be Marvin Fleck on the right there. But Turner's been around here for a long time. How many Turner members in here? Anybody Turner? Yeah, we got a few. Okay. Well, they organized in Sheboygan in 1854. So they've been around for a very long time. Sound mind, sound body. They love to do stuff and physical stuff. So there's a lot of history with that. This is their flag that they had. We invited them, using a steering committee, to know who should be included and what should be included with that exhibit. So away we went. We had a party out at Range Line Inn. Again, that's a lot of times it's the only place that was big enough to hold groups. So they had a big event, a formal event out at Range Line, and there were exhibits along the perimeter of that room, which again would be coming here and being included. The Turners also love picnics, and the picnics in the summertime were wonderful things, and all these people would demonstrate their skills. And so that's what they did. Friday night was the big party. Saturday was a picnic at the museum. They put on the mats there, and people were doing things. So they had a great time. Other things that we were doing at the museum as well. This is a backdrop from the Sheboygan Theater, the Wiles Center. They were doing restoration, and we want to support what's going on there. This is a backdrop that was in a pile of backdrops in the center of the construction site down there. And I looked at them a little bit, and I said, I'll put up a display. If you loan me a couple of these things, we'll put it up. And so they did that, and we wanted to let everybody know who came to the museum that that project was moving along. And so this is the second one. This is supporting the Wade House. We want to support the Wade House, all the things that they're doing out there. And the agreement was you send us a horse and a wagon, we'll put up a backdrop here and do some other things. We hung on to this backdrop. The other one we returned, but the theater didn't seem to be that concerned about getting them back. They didn't know what to do with them either. So if you go into the Native American exhibit, this is what's wrapped around that, a nice woodsy scene. So that's still here in our midst. Okay, now we go on to this. And we're batting pretty good on these things. They're doing really well. This is the Red Wings. The Red Wings is a semi-pro football team. They were very active for a lot of years. Again, John Posowitz, because he comes from a sports family, knew a lot of these things. He's very community-minded. A number of other people in here. Dwight Pelkins down in front here. Grace Recolaitis and Wally are up there. And this was so much fun. I mean, it was hard work, but it was really fun as well, because I needed a steering committee, and we'd be sitting around the table, we'd be trying to take care of things, and these guys, they get together, they want to talk. They want to talk about the old times. I'm trying to get an exhibit put together. And but Grace and I had an understanding. I don't think we ever really talked about it, but we would understand one another, and she would kind of take care of business, because they loved her. They absolutely thought she was the greatest thing ever. And she would pipe up and say, "Is there enough talk, you guys? We got to stop. We got to stop this, and we got to help Bob. He doesn't know anything." And they're right, I mean, I didn't. That was absolutely right, So it was fine. It was fine, and they listened to her, and away we'd go, and we would get going.
Which one was Grace? The interesting thing about these teams is they both had black players on them, but they weren't allowed to live in or rent in any place in Sheboygan or go to any of the hotels. So they would have families of women that would have board them. And I just happened to live next to the Lafines, and they had a couple of them boarding upstairs, and I ran into somebody else that I knew from the south side. She had the same experience. They were boarding next door to her, too. Okay,
there were a number of different accommodations, and eventually there was one of the hotels that did for the traveling teams that had.
But what was interesting is my father used to always hang over the fence, waiting for him to come home because he wanted to talk to him. So we got real used to having black neighbors, and I asked him one time, why does he always do that? He said, they're professional players.
Well, sure. Anyway, it's good. We got to keep going because I got so far to go there. But Grace took care of business. So there's a second quote that she did, which I appreciated too, because in the midst of all these things, we had to try to raise money as well. Whatever we're doing, there needs to be a financial component to it. And the second quote from Grace was, "Okay, you guys, we got to help the museum make some money." And so it was good. It was really good. So here we are out at, again, Range Line Inn. That's the only place that's large enough. You'll see the exhibits behind there, and that became displayed for the museum. Now, a different kind of display is in the next one here. This is County Fair. County Fair, when I was first on the board, before I was involved really here with the museum, the board thought, we should have a booth at the museum. There's a lot of people go there, and in reality, it's Sheboygan County's biggest party. It's really well attended. And so somebody got us on the list, and we got a spot for display, which was somewhere around the horse barns. And it was not particularly useful, But within a year or two, we got a chance at a spot underneath the grandstand. So we got some protection there. And again, within a year or two, we got double space. Sometimes we shared it with the Research Center if they were interested in being part of it. The Plymouth Historical Society shared it with us one year. But the double space really worked out well. It gave us an opportunity to create an exhibit that would slow people down and get them asking questions about the museum, the programs and stuff. The other really, really good news about this was we were about 30 feet from the cream puffs. We knew everybody was going to come by sooner or later. Okay. And what we would do, we tried to take things from the program. This is a water pump that Ken Blindauer built for us to use in the education programs. We take that out. All the kids of all ages were messing with this stuff, Sometimes we took the saw out, we took the wheels out, we took everything out. We sold books, we did all kinds of things. So now we get on to another very special program. Very, very special program. I think it was 2004. Who are these people? The Cordettes, yeah. 4 of the 9 Cordettes. And with all the stuff going on, the building of the museum, all the things going on, and it was Bob Spatt. He was very involved with the newsletter, all kinds of things. He says, Bob, you got to do this. They're here, they're able, they're willing to be a part of a program. They were as big in show business as anybody could be at that time. They traveled the world, they traveled the country. I think there were 9 total altogether, but the original ones were from Sheboygan. The 4 that were available, Marjorie Latsko on the left, Lynn Evans-Mann is the next one. I got to take a peek. Carol Bushman and Dorothy Schwartz. Okay, Carol had the store downtown, and we did business getting plaques and things there, so I knew her already. And Dorothy was very much involved with the museum here as well. And we set a time and a date, and we were the first major event at Blue Harbor. And I think this thing just took off. And we had volunteers. Yeah, I'll volunteer. I'll help. I'll take care of the coats. I'll take care of this. I'll take care of that. It was incredible. George, and I can't remember his last name, he loved to lead singing. So he got up and he led some songs that everybody knows. So we did some singing. And Blue Harbor was trying to, for the first time, feed like 528 people. So we were an hour late before we even got started. But you know what? There was not a person in that room that was going to leave. I mean, this was a magic moment, and these ladies were there. There's also a 5th Cordette there. He was often referred to, the 5th Cordette, and it was Margie's husband, Walter, because he arranged music for him. He arranged some of their music, so he was often, and he was there too, and it was just a grand time. The technology of the time was that Blue Harbor had a camera in the back of the room. They were focused up here on the speakers, and then they had these big screens all around the room. So no matter where you were, you had a good seat for that evening. It was great fun. This is another picture of that. It was great fun. Okay. So next we're going on to the full-day student education programs. Something, again, very unique to this particular museum. Full-day education programs, there are 4. I won't talk about it too many pictures here. But we'll get one. We'll get one up there. All right, here, and that's in your packets that you have describing the 4 programs. They are particularly unique in that we involved teachers in designing them. We met with all the school administrators in the county to say, here's where we're going, here's what we're going to do. We met with teachers Even before this building was built, there was a 2-day seminar with the Sheboygan Area School District hosting that with parochial school teachers and public school teachers, working with teachers, aiming at the programming. And when we met here, it was really fun with the teachers. They said, when you're developing the programs, number one, you can't start before 9:30 because the buses won't get here before 9:30. And you have to be done by 2:30 because if you don't, the buses are going to leave without the kids. So we knew the parameters there. And then they said, you need to have things for them to do. You need to change speakers. You need to change locations. You need to use the gallery. You need to do all kinds of things. So we launched the first program, which is a Native American program at that time, and got pretty confident with that. And then we launched a second program. And each one of these programs, eventually, I think it was bringing about 700 students to it, which was a lot, which was really, really good. Volunteers rose to the occasion, and a lot of really good things happened. They used the whole museum. One of the basic components for the hands-on activities, and we'd have 5, 6, 7 different activities in this same room. Every kid does everything, and that really wasn't possible with tours, with the regular tours. In this program, every kid does everything. And for those of you who've visited a classroom, certainly you've been in classrooms, but I can guarantee you that if I walked into any school and in any classroom, when I opened the door and walked in, every student's going to turn and see who's coming, what's going on. I will guarantee you, if you're in here with 7 groups of kids all focused on a hands-on activity, you can come in here and wander around and they're not going to care. It's not going to impact what's going on. So this is Cal. Cal loved projects. He loved projects. He was an engineer at heart, and he would do things. I said, can we grind wheat? Well, the wheat, grinding wheat was just a real critical part of the early part of Sheboygan County and across the country. And so he got a couple of grinding wheels, cut some grooves in them, and came up with this thing. And it really, it works. Number one, it works, which is just great fun. But we did learn that you can't use wheat that is a little bit moist. That doesn't work. That doesn't work. So here's the next picture. Here it is in action right here. The kids are just really focused on that. And of course, when it grinds, there's really fine flour and there's coarser grind. There's stuff that's a little bit gritty. So Cal also solved that by creating this piece of equipment here. He could take what they've just ground, put it in there, turn the handle, and it's on an angle so that it moves through and it separates out. Isn't that the slickest thing ever, Carol? It is. It just is wonderful. And, Cal did all of those things. Here it is in action with both of them. That's just one of the activities going on in a particular part of that program. So I asked Cal if he would consider building a saw. How many have been to the Wade House? You've seen the sawmill, and the blade goes up and down like this? That's what I wanted him to build. So, not too long after that, here comes a sawmill. And here it is in action, and Myra's there. And Ken Blindauer, who had done the water pump, also did the water wheel. So water wheel, it seems like a very simple thing, but at the time that the county was developing, turbines were also used for doing water power. That's what Wade House has, and a lot of mills did. But the water wheel could be undershot or overshot. He built an overshot one. And I've seen these things in action. It takes relatively little water to make them operate because they have these areas where the water fills it and that starts to turn. Oh, and that was Cass and one of the other activities that we had with weaving, and then candle making is another hands-on activity. So each one of these groups just has a few people in the group, so everybody gets to do everything.
Candle making is why we have it.
Right up here. If you didn't see it, there's a tarp on the floor, and there's candle drippings because that was the activity. And sometimes I would be needed to help out, and I enjoy doing all the things. But the lamp lighting was particularly interesting because a lot of kids, they've been told since forever, you don't mess with matches, you don't play with fire. Well, here they are at the museum lighting an oil lamp. And so that was fun. Carefully supervised, of course. Okay, projects. Some special projects here. We're going to get into this one. Circus Echoes. Circus Echoes is a video. Looks like this. Lots of you are familiar with that. I'm going to talk about it very, very briefly here. Bob Hudaverdick is on the right. He is a person that created this video. And Pete and Shirley and Sonia, part of the Lindemann family and circus people, heart to heart and circus, they were a part of this video, but also very involved with who to include, how to go about this whole project. And in the midst of that, as they talked about it, as Bob and Sonia talked about it, and they talked with me about it, there was three things that I was really concerned about. Number one, I really didn't need another big project and something I didn't know anything about or how long it was going to take or what the end might be. But I said, if we do this, there's three really important things. It needs to be historically accurate. It needs to be historically complete. And the target audience I want you to keep in mind at all times is circus people and circus fans. Those are the people I want you to impress. Everybody else I'm not worried about. You impress those people, that's going to be the goal. So, something that Bob thought, well, this should take about a year and probably be about an hour long. Well, it took 2 years, and it was 2 hours, 2 minutes, and 3 seconds long. But it was all good. So there is that. It's almost a similar time. We get a call from Caspian, Michigan, Upper Michigan. The city there is taking down an old shed, took off the siding. What do they find? Syl Sterling circus posters. Syl Sterling is Sheboygan, of course. Part of the circus history. We had no place to go with it, no time to deal with it. But we have a local tent 79 and talked with them. I said, you can do all kinds of neat things. And you can go see circuses. You can enjoy the exhibit we already have here, but you can do something real as an organization. Adopt this project. And they did. As an organization, Tent 79 rented the truck, took a truck up there, took some people up there, cut it carefully in places that are not noticeable so that it would fit in the truck, brought it back to Sheboygan, found a warehouse that would house it for most of a year, I think it was, until we were ready to bring it into the museum. So here's Tent 79. We had just pulled the plastic down, and this is Tent 79 here, taking a big picture. So now we're on to Holiday Memories. And Holiday Memories started out just about a 10-day event, and it kept growing and growing. And we were in the Taylor House using that. The last one in the Taylor House was here. We're primarily in the Taylor House, but if you look at the small picture on the left at the top, and then the third one down on the left, you'll see at that point the museum, this museum was open, but there are no walls yet, okay? So that was a fun Christmas. The display was over there, but we hung lights around here. The construction people, they weren't crazy about having to clean up and all that kind of stuff. But I said, we're going to open a house. We got people who want to see this. So we hung lights. You could walk through walls. You could do any kind of thing, and a few exhibits down here. So it was a good time on that particular year. And this particular picture is really special, too. I knew from the history that Ruth would talk about, and everybody else would talk about, was the Prangy window animation. What a wonderful wonderful tradition that was. For over 50 years, there were families came from all over, from all around the county on Thanksgiving Day to watch see the windows at Prangies. And I knew if we could get some, we would have something really special. Number one is really good history and something very special to work with. And the first person I had called actually was Jim Hansen at Yonkers, and he had been with Boston Store and I think Prangies before that. And I thought he would know. Plus, the Prangies and Boston Store and Yonkers had Santa Land downstairs. So I know he would know something about it. And I called him up and I talked to him and I said, Jim, where do I start looking? Where can I find some of this? So he said, why don't you come on down? So I went down. We went into the bowels of that building. You know where Santa Land? We were past Santa Land. We were somewhere under that parking lot. And there's shelving with merchandise and stuff on, but on the back, on the deepest part of the shelving, were about 45 pieces of animation. He says, it doesn't work, Bob, and I can't afford to fix them. If I get them fixed, I'm paying, at that point, $30 an hour for an electrician, I got to do this, got to do that. But nobody had the heart to throw them away. They were family. Other Prangy stores, when they got rid of animation, they said, let it go, it's fine. But not Prangies. That was like family. So those pieces were there. He let us use them. And we did an awful lot of work because I could get an electrician for free. I had people that loved dolls who would do costuming for free. We could do all this stuff. And he said, Jim, we fixed them up and got them working. He said, you got to give them to us. And they were happy to do that. They were fine with that. So that was our first 45 pieces. On a trip to Door County, I had heard there was some animation there in a place called Collector's Showcase. And maybe some of you have been there. As you go around Sturgeon Bay, heading to Door County, it's on the right. It's a Chalet Motel, but two private collections. Collector's Showcase, and one was the cars. Her husband had cars, but she had dolls. Barbie dolls, like the largest collection almost in the world, second largest, I think. And the animation, because the Prangy stores, they didn't want it. She says, I'll take it. I like it. And she had it there. I got to know her, and I said, someday when these need to find a new home, please call me first. Give me a chance to raise some money so that we can acquire them. She was very involved with the Neville Museum in Green Bay as well, and wanted to be sure that some of them went there. And that's fair. That's not a problem. Well, 2 or 3 years went by, and Georgia is right there right in the front there, just front. And she has so much fun. But a few years went by, and I get a call. He says, Bob, I think I'm ready. But not all of it. He says, just, how about the Candy Cane construction site? Well, how about we start there? And I said, okay. But I told her I didn't want all of it, though, either. And we had a discussion. He says, well, tell me what you want, and I'll save it for you. I'll make sure that you get it. So I had like 12 different groupings. And I knew fuzzy animals were going to be the biggest thing. So I needed to get those. And some of them we already had, the dolls of old. And she honored that. But the price was pretty steep for the first group. I don't know, $7,000, $8,000, which was fair price. I didn't ask her to give them to us at all. She was a collector. And so that's fine. And I said, Georgia, I can't raise that kind of money. She says, you come pick them up. You take them. You do whatever you want to do with them. Put them on display. Charge admission, send me a check by the first of the year. And that's what we did for like 5 or 6 years. Get another scenario, and that's how she was a business person, and thank goodness for that, because she understood exactly what I needed to do to be able to acquire these things. Eventually, I got a phone call from her saying, Bob, the next time you come up, I want you to bring the biggest truck you can find. And I want you to take everything I got left. Everything I got in storage, everything. I said, Georgia, why is that? I can't afford that. She says, I'm getting so many calls from auction houses. I want to tell them I don't have it anymore. So that's how it went. And as we paid as we could. She says, you just pay me when you can. I'm good with that. And that was the agreement that we had. So that's her and part of the crew. We'd take several vehicles up. Of course, my van and a couple more. And the guy way on the right, that's Kip Early. He was my first elf. Okay, he was helping do with that. But when we got back, here's a fresh load of animation in, and some of the volunteers, Mark Pussler and Kip Earl, and some more of the folks who were there. This were the first people to see this particular grouping, and away we went. And the next picture, she's working, these were kind of tough shape. They needed a fresh, makeover kind of thing. And so Laura's working on that, taking care of that. And then this particular duo shows up here. And you will recognize them. They are usually in front of the Perengi display out there because it's just such a nice thing to have. They get different costumes from time to time, but that's pretty neat. So here's Lynn. She is just unbelievable with costumes. She's kind of a theater person that way, does costumes. And so she went to work having fresh costumes for a lot of the characters. So here's Jerry again. And he's, when we first got the animation, we didn't really know for sure, but I was really concerned about having to crawl around underneath and fix stuff while the show's going on. And so that's why we were at 2 feet. And we did that. So he's wiring stuff, and sure enough, that first year, I made multiple trips underneath to adjust something, tighten something, do whatever. It was good. So here's part of the display. Betty's here. She's helping out, too. And the Candy Cane construction site. Here's the train. And I talked to people from Prangies, the displays that everybody went to see, and on Thanksgiving Day, they just prayed they all work. By Christmas, a lot of them didn't work. But nobody cared by that point. Nobody cared. So these are some that Kip had done. So very, very creative. So then we get into Third Saturdays. And Third Saturdays, I talked to Beth, because I have Second Saturdays. And I was looking for a title of a series of programs that didn't tell you what it was, but it told you there was going to be something special. And I was hoping the quality would be good enough that a whole bunch of people would come no matter what the topic was. I had no idea if it was going to work. But we did a trial run. And I called on my circus friends. Number one, because they knew a lot. Number two, there was 1079 for volunteers, and I knew they had lots of things that could be put on display. We had the video by that time, but we wanted to try out the concept. I wasn't sure we could make it happen. So it was circus for that first one. And oh my goodness, did we have a good time. And here, at the end of the day, it was such a success. At the end of the day, I said, we all got to get together. Everybody who helped out. I don't care if you're selling tickets, if you're a greeter, whatever you were, you come and be a part of this picture. That's where that started. Tim Teige is back with the tux on there. He was here as well. He's a professional clown, and he ran Clown Alley for circuses. He is a ringmaster. He calls the show. He travels all over the country and the world doing that. And he came for this event. So that was a trial run. And I'm going to have just one more thing here. Coming back to TV8, Steve Reiner. He was here for almost all of them, capturing it. But it was a good success. And so talking with the board, talking with the staff, we floated our first year.